My name is Pauleanna Reid, and I will be moderating this panel of lovely ladies who I have the pleasure of knowing personally. A little bit about me. So I am a celebrity ghostwriter. So I own a communication agency called The Writer's Block. And so what we do is we do keynote speeches, op-eds, books for celebrities, pro athletes, politicians, and more. In addition to that, I also write for Forbes. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the rest of the panel so we can get this conversation started. How many of you are currently working on a book? Like you have it in motion, you put pen to paper? Okay, how many of you have told yourself, I want to write a book, you have not put pen to paper? Okay, awesome. So we're going to have a really awesome conversation today, and then we'll leave the floor open for questions afterwards. Cool? Okay, so Alex, Makini, Tasha, these are my girlfriends, so this is like we're just chit-chatting. Why don't you take a few seconds to talk to us about your portfolio, talk to us about the books that you have out, and a little bit about what you do. Give us some background.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Wolf. Background, started a company in 2014, sold it in February. The company was called Boss Babe. You might be familiar with it. It's like a lifestyle brand for millennial women, motivational stuff, really good stuff. And then after I finished that, I wrote a book called Resonate, which I just published in April, and thank you. It's a book about how to build an audience, because part of what happened when I grew Boss Babe is that it was a viral following, and I learned a lot about human nature and how to get people to feel motivated to follow and talk about you to other people in a natural way, so that you don't have to jump and hip or hop through the algorithms of social media. And that's what I'm working on. That's my last project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Makini Smith. I'm from Toronto. Yeah, I see some faces in the room. So I guess my book journey began back in 2013. So my sister had passed away in 2012, and I went through a divorce just before that. And I was in support groups with women sharing my story, and they kept saying to me, wow, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And instead of sharing my story one-to-one, that was a way for me to share it one-to-many. I figured if I was able to help at least one person just by sharing my story, then I'm satisfied with that. After writing my story, before it was actually published, I was able to connect with Bob Proctor. Is any of you familiar with The Law of Attraction, the movie The Secret? So Bob Proctor became one of my mentors, and his wife wrote the foreword for my first book, and that just ended up spiraling into me being one of their consultants, and also writing 3 more books to follow that. So the second book is really basically faith-based affirmations. The third book is a gratitude journal, and the fourth, which was recently released, is a couples journal.
Good morning. I am Tasha Hilton. I'm the Director of Marketing at Simon & Schuster. So I am on the opposite side of these women here. So what that basically means is I help with everything from acquiring new authors to building them as a platform, getting their profiles, and publishing them all the way till about 6 months to maybe 12 months after they are released. I've worked with authors from nonfiction and fiction side, everyone from The Secret, from Kevin Hart to Erica Campbell, Jennifer Weiner, a wide range of authors. So I am excited to answer any questions and help you guys as much as possible.
So you talk about proposals, and so because I've also been on your side of things, I know that you see a lot of them come through your desk, but for the people who don't know what a book proposal is, can you break that down for us and possibly break down, what do you look for when they do come across your desk? What makes a great proposal and what makes a shitty one?
So there's several different processes, right? And I'll just give you the brief process of the version that's probably none of you guys are going to do as of right now. So if a mega celebrity comes in, right, like Gabrielle Union, she put a proposal for her book, We Need More Wine. And so her process is a little bit different because she's a celebrity, normally, and they're writing nonfiction, right? So there's a fiction proposal and then nonfiction. When you're writing a nonfiction proposal, you normally give us a synopsis of what the book will be about, and then you give us a breakdown of each chapter after that. And when that proposal comes in, we're also kind of interviewing the person as they're speaking with us. So she will come in, we have a conversation, she kind of like describes what the book is about. And to be honest with you, sometimes people don't even have a proposal during that process. Like, if you're a really large celebrity, like the Obamas, when the Obamas came in, they didn't have a proposal, but it's the Obamas, right? Like, we don't need one. But at the same time, we're having a conversation, and in that dialogue, they will give us as much information about what it is that they want to write about. Are they writing the book themselves? Do they have a ghostwriter? Who is your ghostwriter? Because if we know them and they're not good, then that kind of makes a decision as well. All those things count into play. Now, at the same time, while they're talking, I'll be completely transparent, and I told Pauleanna this as well. I look at your social media in that conversation, because a part of the entire process, if we do buy your book, we are buying your book. That belongs to us now. We are required to sell that book. If that book does not sell, we lose money. It's a business, right? And so a part of that relationship with you as an author is, how are you going to push your own book? Let's be honest, we do thousands of books. Every book is not going to get the same budget. Every book is not going to get the same PR plan. And so sometimes we're going to require you as an author to use your own platform. If you are coming with an awesome book and zero network, it's going to be really difficult for us to make sense out of that. Now, the fiction side is a little bit different. If you have an awesome content and you're the next Paula Watkins, right, then that could be a little bit different, and we can be able to create a different marketing plan that's going to be able to sell that book, and your profile, your social media profile, might not have to be as large if you're doing nonfiction. Does that make sense?
It's a lot, but I'm sure we're breaking it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of different things. On the fiction side of it, your proposal is your book. You will need to basically have almost the entire portion of it complete. Whereas on the nonfiction side, we're just kind of going chapter by chapter synopsis version. But if you're writing a fiction book, it pretty much has to be complete. We want to know, how does this entire thing wrap up? We need to be drawn into it. And to be honest, if it's not good within the first like 2 to 3 pages, I'm not going to finish reading it. It needs to draw you in from top to bottom.
Okay, so talking about social media, so Alex and Makini, I mean, we live in a very noisy world. How are you able to really like hone in on your voice, right? And we're, you know, a lot of people are influenced by other voices. And how are you able to really tailor your message and your story? Like, what was that process like?
For me, like you said, there's a lot of noise on social media. There's a lot of people portraying to be certain things, and I think it's just very important to be authentic. So I know that my first 2 books are considered in the faith-based, but yet for some it's not church enough. So certain environments won't allow me to come in and speak, because my story of having my first child at 17, or going through certain experiences, they don't want that in their environment. But I continue to stay authentic on my social media. You have to stay authentic in order to build your audience.
Because I think audiences can also, they can tell when you're not,
Yeah.
right? And then obviously that has an effect on how you sell.
Yeah.
Alex, so you were a tech founder, and then you made a transition to becoming a writer. At what point did you make that decision? Why did you make that decision? Where you were incredibly successful before, and now you're in a whole new world. So talk to us about that transition.
A lot of that came from starting a brand about being a businesswoman meant that I always had to show up as the businesswoman. And I was 21 when I started the brand, so I was young, and I was kind of just fooling around with my phones. I wasn't really thinking about, making this as like a long-term life choice. And once I realized that I was growing, I was like, okay, I didn't identify with the brand that I built, and I realized, oh, I'm an artist. Like, I create things and I can leave them. And that was just one of the things I created. And so I felt like I needed to do something that would give me more space to, kind of be the hot mess that I am. And that's why I decided to just be an artist and write, because I feel like that's where I have that that leverage. And it's a matter of a personal space and freedom, of like peace of mind. I'd rather, to me, it's like you get to decide between, do I want to keep up to an image that looks really good that I don't feel good about, or am I just going to really be myself? And even though that makes me super vulnerable, you know, I still feel like it's worth the trade-off, in my opinion.
And what was your writing process like for both you and Makini? Because I know a lot of us have a lot of ideas, but do not know where to start, do not know how to structure. I know when I wrote my first book, like I'm a morning person, so I was doing shifts from like I could write from like 6 to 8 hours at a time, whereas I know a lot of people try and like chop it up in small. Like, what was the personal process for you?
I would say that, has anyone in here like ever like lost a lot of weight, like 10 pounds, 20 pounds, or tried? Okay, it's a very similar, to me it was a very similar experience, to exercise that discipline and do things, it's basically just doing things you don't want to do. And it was something like, as a creative, I didn't want to hear that. I was like, I just want to work when I'm inspired, and I have a good friend of mine who is also a published author, and I would call him all the time. I'm like, hey, when the book comes out. And he's like, it doesn't matter how much you talk about that book or think about that book. If you do not write words, the book will not exist. And I was like, damn, that's so right, And like I would think about calling him, but I was like, damn, I know he's just gonna say the same thing. So it's really about getting words down on the page and writing through the pain. What you write, you have to be okay with writing really badly. Don't go in there thinking you're about to write the best thing ever. You're not, because it's a first draft. You know what I'm saying? Let the ugly stuff come out and then edit the hell out of it. But the thing is, you just gotta get it out. It's really about relaxing your ego enough so that you can get the story out. If it can be as bad as like, the dog was black and it was sitting, I'm serious, like just get it out. And I feel like all writers know this. Like it's just like, it's not that we're better at writing, it's we're better at not editing, like when we're trying to get it out. So those are some of them, yeah.
The process for me required a lot of sacrifice. At the time when I decided to write, I was already a full-time entrepreneur, raising 3 kids on my own. And I would send the kids off to school, and for about 3 months, I would write during the day while they were gone. They come home, I do, my mom stuff, and as soon as they go to bed, I'm up writing till 3 o'clock in the morning. So I did that for 3 months for the first draft, and when I submitted that to the so-called publisher that I was with at the time, he came back and said, that's great, you've had a rough life, but so what? Like she said, it was kind of like a glance over of my life. It was like, okay, so what are you hoping to accomplish with this book? What is your objective? And I had to rethink that. And at first that crushed me. I think for a little while I was like, do I really still want to write a book? And going around sharing my story some more, and people were like, no, you need to do this. So when I got with the second publisher, and she just said, just write what you're feeling. And the emotional process took, it took a lot out of me, because it was a healing process. There's a chapter in my book where I talk about my sister passing away, and I hadn't fully healed from that. So every time I sat down to write about it, I would cry for the rest of the day. So that took me some time, so I had to skip that chapter and go write about the rest of my life until I was ready to sit down and deal with my emotions and actually write how I was feeling. But it was first 3 months sacrifice, and then when I went back to rewrite and be more transparent about my journey, that was maybe another month or so.
Yeah, and one thing I want to remind you guys is that your journey is yours and yours alone, and don't feel like you're ever competing with anybody. My first book took me 4 years to write. And I'm okay with that, right? Where I know other authors who pump out books every 6 months, and that used to discourage me a lot. Take your time with it, because it's part of your reputation, it's part of your brand. You don't want to rush out a really crappy book because it's gonna stay with you forever, right? And then there's the other thing, the reason why I'm in business, right? Like, if you are not a strong writer, maybe take the time to work with a writing coach, a mentor, an advisor. Like, do not be afraid to raise your hand and ask for help. Many of my clients, they're brilliant. They're just not writers, nor do they have the time. So they hire myself and my team to ghostwrite for them, and obviously they get the credit in most instances, right? So don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for help. Now, Tasha, like, what are some common mistakes that can be easily avoided when people, I guess, ask you questions about the publishing industry or proposals or manuscripts that come across your desk? Like, what are we not thinking about or taking the time to do before we get to you?
I hate the word brand, right? But the purpose of it for this sake makes sense. So you really want to brand yourself. It was a couple things that these ladies were saying earlier on. One was about social media. And if, let's say, you are writing a cookbook, and your social media in the last 10 posts has like 2 things about cooking, and then the rest of it is about you, your sister, and your children, it's an issue. Because, no, seriously, right? Because what are you branding yourself for? If you are writing a book and you are now dedicating your time to your next phase in your life and your business, then use that as your business. This is not about you and your family. This is not about what you did on vacation. And so we're looking at all those things. The reason why is because if I'm going to say, okay, we're going to put this money into you, we're going to buy your book, and then we're going to put an actual plan behind to sell your book, and you're all over the place, then I'm like, is your audience even recognizing you as a cook person or as a chef or an inspirational person? Like, how did your audience know you? Because that's what's going to sell. You can't be divided in so many ways. The second part that Pauleanna mentioned was, if you are not good at, you have a great idea, but you can't really put it into concept, please consider a ghostwriter. Because if you present your project to someone, without an agent, and we'll get to that in a second, or if you just give it to somebody and you do have an agent and it's not great, I'm not going to just go out and say you're going to get blackballed, but we will remember your name. And so what happens is, I'm not sure, are you familiar with Simon & Schuster? If you're ready, okay.
Should be if you want to write a book.
So there's the top 5 publishers. Within Simon & Schuster, we have 5 imprints, right? So you might come to my imprint and we might be looking at you, but we all talk, right? You might come to us, present an idea, and I might talk to my friend and was like, no, because what happened is, if you come to me, you're probably going to go to somebody else, and we're all going to talk amongst ourselves. And if it's not fully put together, now I'm not saying, it's one thing if I just don't like it, because I can give it to somebody else and say, this might be a better fit for you. That's a different issue. If it's not together, then when a person comes and asks me, I'm gonna, you might not want that. Don't even waste your time. And you don't want to do that, because if you do that without an agent, and then you get an agent, the agent's already going to know, and they're going to drop you. Are you following? So you want to make sure that you're all the way presented together as a full package before you go out. And if that takes a couple of years, then take that time. I'm not saying relax in a couple of years, but work within those couple of years to prepare yourself.
Because everyone wants like instant success.
Exactly.
Right? Take your time. It's not a race, right? Because you only have that one time to make an impression. You dropped the word agent several times. I've had a literary agent for 3 years. This was back in like 2011-ish. And the literary agent was the plug to several publishing houses across North America. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit more context as to, if you choose to go the traditional publishing route, why you need an agent to represent you, what benefit that does, how do you approach an agent? My agent was connected to me through my mentor, essentially like my sponsor, and we can talk about that, the difference between mentors and sponsors. So I was very fortunate. It's not that easy for a lot of people. Why don't you talk about that?
Sure, and really quickly before I jump into the agent portion of it, because you mentioned traditional route, I just want to mention that, like, although the non-traditional self-published route is totally fine, but I always mention that when you have a machine behind you, it is, and similar to like the music industry, there are a lot of benefits, right? Not only are you not paying for anything yourself, essentially, but you're also going to be able to get access into the big box stores that you just, as an individual, no matter how resourceful you can be, you're not going to get into the Costco's and Walmarts and Targets like a publisher can have access to. You're not going to get into the airport placements, because that costs thousands of dollars just to sit your book in an airport. When you see a book there, a publisher paid over $10,000 just to sit it there, because to us, that's marketing. So in order to get into the actual publishing house, you have to have an agent. Now, how do you get an agent? You have to know somebody. How do you know somebody? You have to get an agent. That type of thing, right? That agent is going to fight for you. And one thing that I always find interesting is because people say, I don't need an agent. You don't know what you don't know, guys. You don't know how much is too little. You don't know how much is too much. You don't know what to ask for. And let's say we get past the bidding portion of it. You don't even know what the process is like to say, are you guys doing this? Well, what about this? What's my marketing? I need more of this. I want to go on tour. The agent is aware of all those things. So if you go to a publishing house and they're not doing something, the agent's going to call up the publisher and say, you need to be doing X, Y, Z for my author. They're going to fight on your behalf. So after the bidding process is over, then you go through the whole publishing process.
Alex, let's talk about marketing from your end. So when you released Resonate, what are some things that you thought about? Because I mean, you have a great audience, you had great numbers, so how are you going to now, and I mean, your audience is very loyal to you as well. You did a lot of the prerequisite work by building a relationship with them. So when you put out the product, I imagine it did well. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the book sold out in the first 3 hours when I put it up. So I'm coming from a whole different, I self-published my book, and I'm learning with the rest of you what she's talking about, because I didn't have patience for all that. And I think it just really depends on how you want to approach the market. For me, because I already had my audience, because I already had my book pretty much, my marketing is, I don't look at any of the stuff as short-term stuff. I build a relationship with my audience every day. I love my social media. I'm addicted to it. Like I've been on it literally since I was as soon as I could. And so for me, it just comes very naturally to use it as a platform of expression. And I think over the years, that's what I've built, with my audience. And I also, part of the strategy of this book was, the whole point is how to trigger word of mouth marketing. And for me, it was like, there's no way I can make a book about this without the book also doing that in itself. And so part of my marketing strategy is a long-term plan. And as much as sales are great, I care more about, do people recommend the book to other people that they care about? That to me is the ultimate marketing, because these things snowball. And like you said, once you have the book, it's done. It's out there forever. So, that you want to structure it so that the conversations people have about you when you're not there, that's really what your brand is. It's what people are saying when you're not in the room.
Quick story for you guys. So I had been a blogger and a journalist before I released my book. Once I had my book launch, about 300 people showed up. And then following the book launch, the Queen Latifah show had tweeted, what are you guys reading this summer? This was 2014. And because I had built such a great relationship with my audience, what do you think they said? They said they were reading everything I couldn't tell my mother. The Queen Latifah show then featured it on the show. Do you see how that works? You have to do the work and build with the audience. There's a theory called the 1,000 True Fans theory by Kevin Kelly. Please study that theory. You don't necessarily need 100,000 million, trillion, zillion people to follow you. Sometimes it's about building these great relationships with the 1,000, the 500, the 5K followers that you do have, and not dismissing them, because your numbers are small.
I was gonna add that your likes and your followers are poor reflections of engagement. They're not real engagement. Their numbers on a screen. What's gonna be real is if you actually impact people, and those are better reflected through actual comments. Those are better reflected through what people save on your Instagram. You can look at that metric, and just the effort that people put in to communicate to you. A double tap is, do you know the last thing that you double tapped? Hell no, you don't remember. But you probably remember a letter you sent to someone who inspired you and why you did it. So that's real engagement.
I want to add into that because she mentioned how well she sold, right? And she went the traditional route. And I want to just kind of give you guys more of an option to see how everything can work from a larger standpoint. We oftentimes First of all, we can see as a publisher how much you sell, even if you're just selling it on Amazon as a self-published author. And so when there is someone that is self-published and that sells a substantial amount of books, we then reach out to that person and say, hey, we want to now buy that book and we want to take you in as a published author with our company. So don't think that every scenario, or it has to be one way for every person. You can do it your way, and then somebody can come in and swoop you over and give you a great number for it, and then you sell millions after that with that same book. It doesn't have to be changed. You might change the cover to revamp it, but that same content can be triple times what you sold after a publisher comes in after you do your hard work.
Absolutely, there's so many ways in the door. Like as a ghostwriter, so I also work very closely with HarperCollins. You guys know HarperCollins, right? And so like they also consider their ghostwriters family. And at some point, the conversation broadens and opens up to, hey, have you thought about writing your own book? Right? So there are different avenues and different ways in. I also, when we're talking about marketing and media, pay attention to the signs. Right? I know people who I have personally spent several thousands on publicity and PR. No PR professional has been able to plug my brand like the way I've been able to do that, right? So when I've had to deal with LinkedIn, MTV Canada, like I've been on every major platform, like, you know, but it's through building relationships. So there are different ways to get yourself out there. For instance, I've been featured in Essence twice, right? And without PR. The first time happened because I was paying attention to my Twitter feed. So I follow all my editors, I follow writers, I follow every magazine, because they often look for their talent on social media. Do you guys know that? Right? So Essence Magazine, they had tweeted something like, yo, tell us how a vision board has changed your life. Tell us your success story. I answered, and Tria Jackson, the Love and Relationships editor, she was like, I put you in the magazine because you were ready. I came with video footage, I came with professional photos, I had vision board parties every other month, so I came ready. So once you have the opportunity, if you're pitching to someone like me at Forbes or someone else in another media space, make sure that your brand is together, because again, you get that first impression, you get that one time to make a first impression. So sometimes you don't, yes, I think it's very important to consider a big giant behind you, but sometimes through personal relationships and just paying attention to small and simple signs can also get you in front of the right people. And I know Makini has been featured in a lot of spaces too, so you can probably talk about how you get in front of the camera, get on TV, etc.
Yeah, I can add to what you're saying about you don't necessarily have to have a huge social media following. Like, I don't know what my numbers are right now, but it's nothing compared to what you have. But since writing the book, it has opened more doors than I can ever think possible. And I created a lot of relationships and collaborations online, just meeting people. I'm from Toronto, but I've done tons of collaborations with big names in the US, with like Rob Hill, Derek Jackson. The book allowed me to do a book signing in South Africa last year. Like, you don't have to have a huge following. It's making those connections online, and if they like what you have to offer, if they like what they see, companies and corporations contact me all the time to come in and speak and to do things, and the book is just really a leveraging tool for me.
Tasha, for the people who are sitting here today with their pen and papers out, what are 3 things when they go home that they should commit to in the next 48 hours? I can hear all the pens. When thinking about writing a book, what should they commit to in the next 48 hours?
First, you have to know your competition. Even if you come to us and you finish a book, we are then going to look for what we call your comp authors and comp titles. So those are authors and books that are similar to what you already have, or a book that you're thinking about doing, and you want to figure out, A, create that list. Then you want to, B, think about, or not think, research who their agents are if you're going to go the traditional route. Now, I can't speak for self-published, but figure out who their agents are. You can do this by simply going to Barnes & Noble, pick up the book, go to the back of the book, go to acknowledgments, because they're going to think they're authors, they're going to think they're agents, they're going to think they're publicists, they're going to think they're managers, they're going to think they're team. Read the back for the acknowledgments, write that stuff down. Then get on your Google and get to work. And if you can't, now I'm not going to say it's going to be as easy as sending in an email, they're going to respond back to you, because they're probably not, but you get creative. Send them. Now,
Spill all the secrets, girl.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, you want to get creative, and this might sound cheesy, but this is old school marketing. But if you can send them something nice that gets their attention, even if it's something that's like a basket of like edible arrangements or something with a note in it that says, I just sent you my proposal in your email, check it out. Because it gets their attention, right? Like, you get so many, you do not even understand how many proposals they get, let alone us, right? So they're gonna get tons of it, stand out. The second thing is, I know we talked about social media and we all have different perspectives on it, but from my perspective, if you're going the nonfiction route, that's what we're gonna look at for the traditional way. And so you need to start building your social media. I'm not saying you need 100,000 followers, but I am saying that you need to be consistent. You need to have a plan. You need to be engaged with them. I want to see like activity going between back and forth. And be sure to know you do not have to have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and all the etc. Even if you just have one and it's strong, that is fine. Because there was an author, Cleo Wade. Anybody familiar with Cleo Wade? She only really has Instagram. Her Twitter is like non-existent, and so is Facebook, but she's strong on there, and that is what appealed us to her, well, her to us. And the third thing is relationships. So you need to go out there, and there's so many groups of organizations that you can be able to get into that's going to give you tips from your perspective, right? From potential authors that are right where you are right now, or maybe a step above, and they're going to be able to help you get to where you're going. So those are 3 tangible things that you can work on today.
I'm gonna add a 4th, mindset. Right? A lot of people say they want to write a book, no books come out, right? I'm sure we all have a friend who has said that before. And also too, like dealing with the naysayers, right? My first book, Everything I Couldn't Tell My Mother, was a very personal book. I had all my skeletons, my lies, my secrets of my life in there. It was my way of bridging my relationship with my own mother, who was emotionally disconnected from me. Everybody told me, people were calling me and telling me like, at the time I was like 21, 22, they're like, what do you know about life? You shouldn't be writing anything, or just really discouraging me. I had failed grade 11 and 12 English. I'm a college dropout. So a lot of people were like, and I live with depression. I've lived with depression and anxiety for over half my life. So people were like, what the fuck do you know? Like really, like why are you writing a book? And I knew in my heart, like you have to find a place inside your heart where nothing is impossible, right? Like people, you know what I mean? Like people will discourage you, but it's because they're giving you advice rooted in their own fear and rooted in their own doubt. You know what I mean? My book was a stepping stone to something greater. Last year, I brought in 6 figures, right? From my own business, from my own brand. And the book was a stepping stone to get there in launching all of my dreams, right? So I really want you guys to, there's so many technical things that you can do, but if you don't have the mindset, and if you don't have the discipline, and if you're gonna allow people to discourage you, you are not cut out for this. Like, don't even start. Don't waste your time.
And can I say one quick thing? You guys need to read. It's so many times people say that they want to be authors, but they don't read. It really like annoys me, because I'll ask them like, they'll say, oh, I have this book, and I say, oh, did you read this book? No. Did you read that book? No. That's fine. You don't have to read every book, right? So I say, well, what books do you read? Well, I'm writing mine right now, so I'm real busy with that. Okay, well, what book was you currently reading before that? Well, see, like, you need to read, because you're going to, especially if you're doing, not even, I was going to say, especially if you're doing fiction,
no, just
fiction
read, period.
and nonfiction, just read, because you're going to get so many different ideas about different writing styles. And then when you're going to have a conversation with your authors, other authors, agents, publishers, you're going to look like an industry professional. You want to be able to speak to people that are in your industry as if you know what the hell you're talking about. So I'm going to give you this one book that is similar to what she was saying in terms of the mindset that you need is The Secret. It is one of my favorite books. If you have not read it, please read it, by Rhonda Byrne. And this book will help you be able to make tangible steps that you guys will be able to use today to get in the mindset of knowing that regardless if it's writing and or anything else that you want to do, that it can start happening, but you have to think it first, then believe it, and then start moving in on that action item. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, last but not least, where can we find you, and then we're going to take questions. Please make them good. And if you were in the last session, no, some of you may not have been. Rooks, what'd you say? Don't ask something that can be Googleable.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Take the time, think through your question. We want quality questions. If you can Google it, yeah. Thanks.
So to my point, I'm not on every social media, but my biggest one is, or not biggest one, my main one is Instagram, so it's Tasha_Hilton. You can follow me there. And then you can just DM me if you, and I'm saying that because if you're asking a real question and you, no, seriously, like, I mean, sometimes you just be like, here's my email address, and then people just be like, oh, answer the question that you just answered here, or like, you know, let's do some work, right? So if you DM me, we can have a conversation. I'm totally open to answering anything or helping any of you guys as much as possible, because I'm hearing people are getting scammed and it's like, what the hell? So yes, just DM me there, and then I can answer any questions that wasn't answered here today.
Where can we find you?
I'm on most of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, under my name, Makini Smith, or Instagram it's under The Real Makini Smith, because there's somebody under there. M-A-K, so the, M-A-K-I-N-I-S-M-I-T-H. And there's also a duplicate account for the books, which is under A Walk in My Stilettos.
And me and Makini live in Toronto, Canada, so if any of you are visiting, say hi, okay?
I'm Alex Wolf on the gram, just Alex Wolf.
I love her. Okay, so we want to answer any questions. I didn't mean to discourage you guys, but we want to make sure we get to the juicy questions. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jessica Ticci here from DC. One thing that's been kind of really, I'm just soaking in, is how many awesome people of color are here. And so I just want to congratulate you for that. Can you talk to us about how being not only a woman, but a woman of color in this writing and publishing industry has affected your journeys?
Okay, so for myself, being a woman and a woman of color and an author, I find myself in a room where most times I'm either the only black person or the only black woman. Bob Proctor is one of my mentors, and most times if there's like 100, 150 people in the room, there's probably 2 or 3 black people in the room. They look at you like you must be important if you're here. So I use that to, I use that to my advantage. You know, I tell them about everything else that I'm doing, and it's kind of like the elephant in the room. Everyone wants to come over and find out, well, who are you?
In terms of the other side, where's the publishing house, the majority of it is women, right? Women that look like me, not necessarily. In terms of the agents, there's only one major black literary agency, and that's Serendipity. That's it. And so what's super interesting and a little disheartening is that right now we're in the space where there's so many people that are writing about race and politics from the black perspective, right? And so I'm not even gonna say the name, but there's a very famous political person, and they were telling us about the proposal, and they have a literary agent, and the literary agent is a white woman who you can tell throughout the conversation could not relate to anything that this person was saying about the stories, about just so much stuff that's happening. And we left that meeting, and I'm thinking, why the heck did he get her? I mean, did she get, like where are the black literary agents that are fighting for the stories, because the stories are personal. So sometimes you just get so wrapped up in it that you just want to be able to represent this individual, but there's nobody that looks like us that's even sitting in the room. So I don't know if it's maybe they aren't interested in that space or they're just not ready yet, but it's not there. And in Simon & Schuster, we do have a lot of diversity within the authors. Just not a lot of diversity within the staff. And it's not because they don't want us, it's just that there's not a lot of us that's present. And I even see that when interviews come in, there's not a lot of us that walk through the door.
Hey guys, my name is Amadou, and my question is, our greatest breakthroughs come from our most difficult challenges. What strategies do you guys use to overcome and persevere?
How to overcome challenges. I just think about death. I think about my immortality and how it's inevitable. So that always just sets me straight. Like, what's the point? What's the point of life if you're not gonna do what you wanna do? And even when things get hard, if you still wanna do what you wanna do before you die, and death is inevitable, that's the only thing that we know for sure is gonna happen. So for me, it just really helps me keep things in perspective.
For everything that I've ever wanted, it's on the other side of fear. I was terrified of flying. I get on planes every month to fly to different parts of the world to have different experiences now. I was terrified of public speaking. Like 3 years ago, I would rather die than sit here and talk in front of a stage. It's provided so many opportunities. So I use an acronym for fear. False evidence appearing real, and flip it to face everything and rise.
I just think about my why. Like, you know, we're sitting here looking really cute, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's smelling fresh, but like, I know when we go back home, we're all fighting our own private battles, right? Like I told you guys, like, I have severe depression and anxiety. You wouldn't know because, like, you know what I mean? Like, I look great today, but but some days I literally can't get out of bed, right? But another why, like what a lot of people don't know, and I'll share this with you privately, it's not really private, but you know, my father has a kidney disease, you know, so I'm constantly, and like the doctor has, you know, 2 years ago, the doctor gave him 5 years to live, which means we're now at 3. I think about that every single day, and I think about, you know, if I give 100% of myself every single day, I can do something that will impact him so he can have a richer experience. Do you understand? While he's still here. So you gotta figure out, like, what is your why? Like, why are you doing this? It cannot be for likes and comments. Like, don't give me that bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a deeper reason as to maybe you're a single mom and you're doing this for your kids, or, you know, maybe you're, like, whatever the reason is, like, and I think in order to find your why, it requires a level of self-awareness. It requires conversations that you need to have with yourself, because a lot of people are looking outside of themselves for the answers when you guys already know what the answer is, and you need to listen more to that intuitive voice, because it will never ever lead you astray. Do you understand? Awesome.
All right, this is the last question.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, so much for being so transparent. My name is Halima de Oliveira, and I'm the CEO of BUNHD. It's a transformational coaching company, but specifically for Muslim women. And so my question is I'm the author already of 2 books. And so my first book was Jenna's First Hijab. So it's a book for Muslim girls. I've sold 1,000 copies in the first year. This is my second book, which is not without my hijab, and this one has sold a little under 100 copies. So my question is as a self-published author of 2 faith empowerment books, what is a great way, and this might be for you, Alex, as you're a self-published author as well, is what is a great way for me to gain more exposure? So it's great that in my community, I'm thriving, but I would actually like to thrive outside of my community, because the goal and my why, so thank you so much for saying that, is to change the Muslim narrative in this country. And so what is a great way to gain exposure from the self-published route? And then what is a great way for me to transition in my genre? So my genre, you know, as a whole is faith books, so Islamic faith books. So how do I do that?
Well, the only part about that I feel confident in answering is just really studying, both studying and equipping your audience with language that they need to use to help illustrate the narrative that you're trying to represent. So first, again, is to study. What do your readers say about your work? And do they feel compelled to talk to women outside of the community about it? Or is it something that they feel more like they should just talk within themselves? And if it is that, then try to come up with ways to, again, maybe it's certain language that you can use in your books, or concepts that you can coin so that they feel more confident in wanting to represent and express themselves outside of that community. But it's basically figuring out what you need to do to get the readers you already have to market. You know, they might not realize that's what they're doing when they're talking about you, but encouraging them and supporting them in the confidence to express themselves outside of that. And I think over time, and you're in a long-term game, this is not something that's gonna happen overnight. This might live on throughout your legacy, but like this is the mindset you wanna give to that.
To add to that, so I'm self-published. My first 2 books are considered in the faith-based genre, Christian. I have been on almost all of Canada's major media platforms, many in the US and some in South Africa. And that wasn't about, or that didn't originate from trying to push my book. It was just being authentic about sharing my story, and people who can relate to my story actually pitched for me. So I've never actually sent an actual pitch to anybody to be on their media platform. They've reached out to me because they said, well, we saw your story about this, and then you get to mention the book, but people are coming on to hear your story because they can relate and you have a solution.
Awesome. Thank you
So I just have 2 quick things to say. This is straight to consumer marketing for you. The first thing is, and this is for everybody as well, I don't know if you're on Goodreads. So Goodreads is something that you need to get on. It has over 100 million readers on there that are looking for books to read. You will get reviews on there, so think of like the Yelp for books, right? You want to create a profile for yourself. Then you can do Q&As on there. The more reviews that you have, the more people that are going to be able to see it. Once you do all of that, then you're going to want to be able to do Goodreads giveaways. You can do 5 at a time. It's going to come out of your own budget. It's going to cost $119 per giveaway. Once you do a giveaway, it's going to alert all those people that are in the faith-based industry or genre that's going to say, I want to read this book. Boom. That gives you like an instant 10,000 people that now know about your book. The second thing is book clubs. 2 ways to outreach for book clubs. Each indie bookstore has a book club coordinator. Get your pen and paper out, contact those individuals, let them know about your book, that this is a great book club. Create a reading group guide. That's about 5 questions that the book clubs will think about when they want to be able to discuss the book, and then a little bit of information about yourself. You do the work for them, they'll be able to insert that for the book clubs. And then the last thing is Book Reporter. Book Reporter is a platform that outreach to book clubs, not just independent bookstores, but your mom and pop type of groups and things like that. You can also do this through meetup.com. They have a lot of book clubs on there as well. And then through that, you'll be able to do outreach to those organizations as well. Again, you'll need the reading group guides for every book club outreach that you do.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope everybody's mind was blown.